Thanks for joining us. I'm Alex Bell, and this is To the Point, where we take the time to go in depth into the issues that are affecting the lives of Northern Californians. And tonight, we are taking a personal look at a controversial topic: reparations. For more than a year, we've reported on California's first in the nation statewide reparations task force. Now, members are exploring what reparations to Black Americans can look like and who should be eligible. So tonight, we are focusing on the journey of two Sacramento families with roots in Coloma, the heart of the California gold rush. They are on a quest to reclaim family land that they say was taken by the state decades ago through an unfair process. Becca Habegger has their stories tonight.
My Uncle Marion, he loved this place.
For Jonathan Burgess, a trip to Marshall Gold Discovery State Historic Park in Coloma is a return to what was once family land.
Looks like he's shadowboxing, right? And looks like he's barefooted, or, maybe we just went for a swim.
Burgess, who traces his California roots back more than 170 years, is on a journey of discovery, one that is bittersweet.
I didn't have this picture the last time I was at the park. I would guess that he would look to be somewhere in this area. It's just surreal. Interesting.
His great-grandfather, Rufus Burgess, was brought to California as a slave around 1850 at the time of the gold rush. He became free soon after, took up gold mining, and bought land in Coloma, the family planting and farming fruit trees and opening a blacksmith shop.
Pretty emotional to be here.
Burgess is digging up the photos and documents to prove what in the park was once family land, and that the state of California took it from them through what he says was an unfair process.
This is one of those situations where this should still be our land.
In the late 1940s, California acquired some of the family property, Burgess says, and our research shows, through a process called eminent domain. That's when a government condemns private property and takes it for public use, such as for highways, airports, and schools. In this case, for Marshall Gold Discovery State Historic Park.
Yeah, it looks viable with houses and a resort across the way, so I don't know what was really condemned.
Eminent domain is essentially a sale forced by the government, and landowners are supposed to be paid fair market value. It's actually in the United States Bill of Rights. The Fifth Amendment of the Constitution says private property cannot be taken for public use without just compensation. But Burgess says his family was undercompensated and ultimately had no say in the process. For example, in the years leading up to the 100th anniversary of the gold rush, state officials were in a land rush, passing laws and urgency measures allowing the State Park Commission to more easily and quickly acquire property through eminent domain. A July 1947 memo from the Deputy Attorney General to the governor said,
"The spot is of historical interest and immediate acquisition is necessary, and that it will play a major part in the 1948 and 1949 centennial celebration."
Months later, the state started the process of taking 4 parcels of land in Coloma from 2 black families, ultimately paying just under $10,000 to be split among 6 people in this forced sale. And this is just one example.
True history needs to be told, no matter how uncomfortable it is.
Dawn Bassiano is the great-granddaughter of Pearlie Monroe, among the black landowners forced to sell their property to the state.
He went to court and was adamant about keeping what was his. And in the end, the state won.
I'm just a volunteer researcher helping Dawn.
Jeff Lee lives in Coloma and does volunteer research for the state park here and for people like Bassiano exploring their family history. He says Pearlie Monroe owned several hundred acres of land throughout Coloma and beyond. Much of it the state took through eminent domain.
Pearlie was never, ever, ever able to get back what he lost. That generational wealth was non-existent. There was nothing there to pass on or to pass forward because much of it had been taken by the state of California.
That's after he and other black families had contributed to Coloma during the gold rush and in the following decades.
There were blacksmiths, there was barbers, there were people that owned bathhouses, and then people that did cleaning and cooking for other miners and themselves. So a lot of them became farmers, they became ranchers.
It's important for kids, especially little black children, to know their history, how much they had an influence out here, what they've done.
Some new signs installed in the park in the last year help teach that history.
One of the asks from Jonathan was like, could you please recognize those properties that may not be recognized? And I thought, fantastic idea. So we've come up with several of these signs.
Barry Smith is the state park's Goldfields district superintendent. He says these signs came from conversations with Burgess and Bassiano, who want to see their family stories better told here.
This is you.
We were with Bassiano in May as she saw her family sign for the first time.
Andrew's son Pearlie later bought plots of land to preserve the gold rush history of Coloma. Wow. The state of California then bought the land that became this state park. Wow.
Pretty good.
Yes. They didn't go into the details, but at least, it's a start, right?
They say it starts with this, telling the true story. But then when it comes to righting past wrongs, they say that could look like giving back some of the land or paying for the land that was taken unfairly.
If the state came in and took land through eminent domain, if you can, give it back or fairly and justly compensate those families.
Burgess and Bassiano have a rock to stand on thanks to a recent win by another Black California family. Last year, Governor Newsom signed a law allowing Los Angeles County to transfer land back to the descendants of Willa and Charles Bruce, an African-American couple who opened a Southern California beach resort for Black families in the early 1900s, at a time when racial segregation barred them from many beaches. The Bruces withstood threats from white neighbors and even the KKK. But in 1924, the city of Manhattan Beach took the land through eminent domain, saying it planned on building a park, though that didn't happen for decades. The land ownership eventually transferred to the county, and nearly a century later, just this July, after much advocacy and that change in state law, LA County returned the land to the couple's heirs.
It's not a one-size-fits-all model at all.
I spoke with Kavon Ward, who led the Justice for Bruce's Beach organization.
One of the most important parts of our advocacy, it's where we start actually, is informing the public of what's happened. Before we do any call to actions, we over-inform.
She has now launched an organization called Where Is My Land, along with activist Ashanti Martin.
And find and help Black families who lost land or had land stolen because of their race, just like Willa and Charles Bruce did.
And the building there.
They're working with Jonathan Burgess as he works to reclaim the land in Coloma. We asked Barry Smith about this goal.
That would be unfair to say, because I don't know. That's at a much higher level. What I can help somebody with is if there's a story that needs to be told or would like to be told, I have no problem listening to that and coming up with a solution and maybe expanding those stories. But I can't speak upon the potential reparations or his ask of that. That's beyond my scope.
A lot of the things are outside of the individuals that work inside the state parks, their hands. They don't have the control that they need to make those big, wide sweeping changes and decisions. So it has to come from, folks higher up.
They're calling on state leaders, and Burgess is clear he does not want to displace anyone.
If anybody were to want to uproot somebody, that means we haven't learned and we haven't gotten better. And so I think we are better. But in areas where there's nothing being done and it clearly should be returned, I want those people to be in support of that and say, yeah, we should be returning it.
An opportunity to rebuild family and regional wealth.
Anything that we put here, like a bed and breakfast or a barbecue shop, would bring value not only to the park, but to the region.
In a place where he says that opportunity was taken from them.
It could be a part of the local economy. Who knows, the House of Burgess's restaurant, bed and breakfast, tell the story. Yeah.
And Becca's with us now. She's been covering this for a year. I cannot believe it's been a year already.
Better part of a year. Since
December,
December,
better part of a year. Yeah. I know it's so crazy that we're almost to the end of the year again. But anyways, what are the next steps for this? What can people do?
Yeah, so you mentioned the California Reparations Task Force. Both Bassiano and Burgess have testified before the task force, sharing their personal stories of family land loss. That was back at the task force's September meeting. Well, coming up in the future here, the task force is due out to produce a report to give to state lawmakers, and in it they could recommend something be done with this land that was taken from them. But essentially, Burgess says he doesn't want to wait that long. So both he and Bassiano are in the process of sharing their stories publicly, like with us here at ABC 10, hoping that they will fall on the ears of someone who perhaps has the power to do something sooner
And are other families also speaking out about this?
Yeah, that's a great question. Just last week, the Sacramento Observer published a report in which they said there is a pair of brothers who say they are related to a man who was brought to Coloma as a slave and eventually freed. His name is Nelson Bell. I have found that name in my research. And so they say they are also a descendant of an early Black Coloma family. Needless to say, this is a story that is very much in process, and we will continue to follow it.
All right, and we know that you talked to state parks as well. Were they able to do anything else?
Yeah, beside what you heard in the story, State Parks does point on a broader level to its initiative launched in 2020 called the Reexamining Our Past. They're doing everything from looking at possibly renaming some landmarks and some park names to, in this case, expanding the story told about early Black families in Coloma at the Marshall Gold Discovery State Historic Park. So this is something that, one state official called a gut check, looking at the names and information installed in these parks, in some cases more than 100 years ago. So definitely some things worth revisiting here in 2022.
All right, Becca, thank you so much. As always, great to see you. So thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
All right, 2 bills aimed at regulating social media companies in California are close to making it to the governor's desk. We're breaking down what the opponents have to say and why they've got support from both sides of the aisle.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
It was June 12, 1987, when the late Ronald Reagan said those words in front of the Brandenburg Gate in West Germany. Former President Reagan called on Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev to tear down the Berlin Wall that surrounded West Berlin, preventing access to it from East Berlin. In 1989, the wall came down. Gorbachev was respected in the West for ending the Cold War. He was ridiculed at home for the collapse of his country. So why bring this up today? Well, Gorbachev, the last leader of the Soviet Union, he passed away at the age of 91. His radical reforms led to a series of unintended events. He tore through the Iron Curtain. He opened relations with the United States, agreeing to a historic summit, and he signed treaties to reduce the size of his country's nuclear arsenal. Gorbachev also withdrew Soviet troops from a 9-year war in Afghanistan. When the Soviet flag was lowered for the last time at the Kremlin, Gorbachev resigned. He later won a Nobel Peace Prize and has remained a man of influence. And in 2016, he told the Associated Press that Russia and the United States must strengthen their ties so that they could lead the world to a new path. He pointed to his relationship that he built with Reagan during the 1980s. All right, a controversial bill is making its way through the Capitol, and we asked you to weigh in. So after the break, we're going over your points. It's crunch time at the state capitol once again. Tomorrow is the deadline for state lawmakers to get their bills passed. So 2 bills successfully made their way through the legislature, and they would change the way that social media companies operate right here in California. One bill called the California Age Appropriate Design Code would dictate how companies like TikTok and YouTube can target kids and require new safety features. It's modeled after a law recently passed in the UK. Now, opponents say this is invasive and would drive some businesses just out of the industry. We spoke to one of the bill's authors who says that it is necessary to check private companies that play a large role in kids' lives.
I don't think that we have to make this false choice that tech wants us to make. Well, either don't let your kids on it at all or else. I think we can have both. We can have the access that these things allow and recognize the reality that a lot of kids are on this and there's probably no putting that genie back in the bottle, but we can keep it safe and make sure it's safe and enact basic safeguards so that if you're a parent and you let your kid install Snapchat, you know it's not going to be used to exploit them.
The other bill, AB 587, would require social media platforms to make their content moderation policies public. Supporters from both sides of the aisle say it's needed to help keep the internet safe. Opponents say that this gives people a roadmap to get around protections. But both of these bills are now back in the assembly and could soon be at the governor's desk. And we are hearing from many of you about another bill moving through the state legislature. If passed and signed into law, the Teens Choose Vaccines Act would allow California kids 15 and up to give their own consent to receive HPV and hepatitis B vaccines, to have access to birth control and abortions, and get tested and treated for sexually transmitted infections. So supporters argue that consent to other vaccinations should be included in those rights. But Those who oppose the bill, like the group Protection of the Educational Rights of Kids, say that medical procedures that minors can consent to are extremely limited and are only for active conditions. They also say that it violates a federal vaccine compensation program and would silence parents. So we asked you at home to weigh in, and there were definitely a lot of hot takes. So we have Jason. He says all decisions should be 18. Voting, smoking, drinking, military, firearms, medical, etc. If you're old enough to be drafted or sentenced to life in prison at 18, everything else should be the same. However, if you want to move the baseline for being an adult to 21, then all decisions, voting, smoking, drinking, military, firearms, medical, etc., should be at 21. You can't have some at 18 and others at 21. Then we have Dave. He chimed in saying, considering the large amount of parents getting bad, dumb medical advice from Facebook, 15 is fine. You object to this, you should know that you did it when you made COVID a political issue instead of a health issue. And then Alexandra said 18, the legal adult age. They should not be making medical decisions if they are also unable to make any other adult decisions. Not sure why this is even a decision or a discussion, but it's ridiculous. All right, we want to know some of your thoughts. You can reach out to us. All you have to do is just email me and the team. We're super easy to get a hold of. It's being called a climate catastrophe. 1/3 of Pakistan is underwater. Monsoon season came early this year, and flooding has affected over 33 million people since June. More than 1,000 people have died, and much of the country's infrastructure and agricultural fields have just been ruined. And the country is calling for international aid. Pakistan officials estimate that it will cost upwards of $10 billion to fix the damage, and they say the country does not have the resources to recover.
This is a humanitarian disaster, of epic proportions. Thousands are without shelter, many are without food, and people are stranded. We need to ask not just the provinces and Islamabad, it is beyond the capacity of any one administration or government to rehabilitate and even manage the rescue and relief.
The Sacramento Pakistani American community is partnering with a nonprofit group called Safa Marwa Foundation to raise $100,000 to help those who have been impacted by the flooding. You can find their GoFundMe link on our website at abc10.com/tothepoint. All right here back in California, we're looking at triple-digit heat for the foreseeable future. Chief Meteorologist Monica Woods is with us tonight. Monica, what the heck is going on now?
Right now, it's not so bad considering what we're heading into. Today, a little bit warmer than yesterday. Gilmore backyard right now. It is clear and calm sunshine across the region. We're starting to pick up that northwest wind. That's going to warm us pretty quickly here. Our temperatures in the low to mid 90s in the valley, 81 with sunny skies for the Sierra. Our peak heat hitting over the holiday weekend. So for Labor Day, 113 degrees. It's dangerous heat that will stretch now into Tuesday with that excessive heat watch in some places up to 115. So a couple of things we're going to be tracking: the potential for flex alerts, air quality issues, fire danger increasing, and sporting events already postponed or delaying the start of the game just to prevent some bigger problems developing. High pressure ridge, that's the sinking warming air across the entire west. And that's why for flex alerts, we're calling for a real stress on our electric grid all across California and a good part of the west as well. Our 10-day forecast, we've got temperatures that start in the 100s tomorrow, stretching into the holiday weekend, and again peaking Sunday into Monday, highs between 110 and 115. Not seeing much relief, Alex, until we head into the end of next week.
Thanks for hanging out with us on this Tuesday evening. If you got questions or something to say about anything that you saw tonight, we want to hear from you. There's a million ways to reach me and the team. We have Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or just simply shoot us an email. We hope you have a great Tuesday. We'll see you on Wednesday.
Baby, let's cruise away from here.